far left, and he mixes his leftism with Islamism. He's going to make the de Blasio years look like the golden age. And I can tell you in Florida, we're affected by this just with the law enforcement alone. If you're working in NYPD, do you want to go out there and risk your life knowing that the mayor hates you? No, a lot of them are not going to want to do that. And in Florida, we've established a $5,000 recruitment bonus. So if you are somebody that doesn't want to serve under that guy as mayor, you come to Florida, any state or local law enforcement agency, you get $5,000 right at the top.
So guys, I wanted to come back to you. I wanted to bring you a video about Zohran Mamdani. That man wants you to believe that Muslims are the true victims of 9/11. And again, I can tell you 100% fact, they are not. But, you know, they claim to be the actual victims of 9/11. Now, that's not true in the least, but he wants to believe that. Now, he said the other day that his aunt, after 9/11, was on a subway in New York, and she felt very uncomfortable wearing her hijab or headpiece or Muslim scarf, whatever you want to say, on the train. And that should be proof right there of Muslim hatred, of Islamophobia. Yeah. Number one, we found out that there's no aunt. There is no aunt whatsoever. Now, that lived in the United States at the time. No aunt. So he comes back and he says, well, it was, I called her aunt, but it was my dad's cousin. So it was your cousin once removed. Your second cousin, whatever. And again, you called her aunt. So, you know, I want everyone to understand. If you would have said the truth, if you would have said, oh, well, you know, that was my dad's cousin or whatever, it wouldn't have had the same impact that it did with, that's my aunt. Number one. Number two, it never happened. And I'm sure it never happened to his second cousin or whatever either. Now, I'm going to show you what Zohran Mamdani said about Andrew Cuomo and others that called him out for lying. Watch.
Recently, in a recent address about Islamophobia, you referenced your aunt and some of the harassment she was facing post 9/11. Is that a blood relative?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was speaking about my aunt. I was speaking about Zerafui, my father's cousin, who sadly passed away a few years ago. And for the takeaway from my more than 10-minute address about Islamophobia in this race and in this city to be the question of my aunt tells you everything about Andrew Cuomo and his inability to reckon with a crisis of his own.
Let's get this straight. Your aunt was a victim of 9/11 because she was on a train afterwards on a subway in New York. And she felt weird sitting there with her hijab on, with her scarf on, whatever. She felt weird, so that should be proof of Islamophobia, that Muslims are the victim of 9/11. Number one, that shows nothing. Again, that's talking about her feeling of being on a train. And we discovered that there was indeed no aunt. And then you come back and you say, well, it was my cousin once removed. It was her. And you're the victim. Now you're the victim because nobody believes you, because Andrew Cuomo and others pointed out the fact that you lied. Yeah. So now you're the victim. You're the victim. Now I'm going to show you him, Zohran Mamdani, on a radio show shortly thereafter, talking about this. Watch.
At the press conference yesterday, they said, can you tell us who your aunt is, who you were referring to? I said, yes, this is my aunt. This is my Zehra Fouhi. This is my father's cousin, and this was her story.
So how can you convince New Yorkers if that is the type of person that you are, in other words, that you don't tell the truth?
Well, it's not a lie. My father's cousin is my aunt. That's how I referred to her growing up my whole life, Zehra Fouhi. And I think to have the takeaway from the New York Post and so many others after I gave a speech outside of a mosque for 10 minutes about the Islamophobia we've seen in this race and in our politics, to be the question of whether or not Zehra Fouhi was my aunt.
You're mad because people like Andrew Cuomo and others took away something from your speech that you didn't like. Again, you wanted them to take away that your aunt was the victim of white people being bigoted. That's what you wanted them to believe. And they didn't believe you. They pointed out, number one, you're lying. There is no aunt that lived in the U.S. at that time. No aunt. So again, you got mad. You got mad. You were like, well, my second cousin, I called her aunt. So again, she is my aunt. No. Again, why couldn't you just say the truth? That was my second cousin. Well, because the second cousin doesn't have quite the same impact as the aunt. And again, you understand that. And now you're saying that you're the victim. First, your aunt was the victim. Then we realized, well, there is no aunt. Then, well, I'm the victim. I'm the victim because, again, you took away that I lied from my speech. I didn't lie. Well, in fact, you did lie. You did lie. And again, people are going to take that away from your speech. They're going to look at it, they're going to think, well, again, what kind of man is this that's going to lie about something like that? But again, you constantly play the victim. And you want people to believe that Muslims are the victim of white supremacy, of white bigots. Watch.
I get messages that say the only good Muslim is a dead Muslim. I get threats on my life. On the people that I love. And I try not to talk about it. Because the function of racism, as Toni Morrison said, is distraction.
In fact, you bring it up all the damn time. That white people, white, nasty, bigoted people, again, they're against you. They're against Islam. They're against Muslims. Again, they're white, bigoted, nasty people in a white, bigoted, nasty country. In a white, bigoted country that your family, again, came to from Syria or wherever your family's from. Again, you guys came here why? Seeking a better life. Seeking a better place than where you came from. And you found it. You found it. You're now running for mayor of New York. Again, the child of immigrants is now running for the mayor of New York. Again, in a bigoted white country, is running for the mayor of New York. And is probably going to win. Yeah. Again, your whole Islamophobia, whatever, is false. It is 100% false. Again, and when you give a 10-minute speech about how this country is so bigoted, so nasty, so whatever, and you lie in that speech, and you make up an aunt that does not exist. Yeah. And people call you out. Oh, again, the reason why they're calling you out is because they're bigoted. They're nasty. Whatever. No. They're calling you out because, again, your speech was entirely about how this country is racist. It's bigoted. And again, when your entire speech is about that, and you lie in that speech, yeah, that's going to be called out. But again, you love to play the victim. You want to be the victim. You want Muslims to be the victim. But again, you're making white people the victim. This white country that allows you in. Again, this country was founded and built by white men, and it still is majority white. And they allow you into the country. They allow your family into the country with open arms. And you spit in the face of this country. Yeah, you're the one that has the issue. But again, that's what they do on the left. On the left, they play the victim card. They sit there, they point out that, white people, they're bigoted, they're racist, they're nasty people, whatever. And again, you played that victim card, which is what you've always done. So yeah, you have always brought that up. You've always brought up that that you believe the country is racist, and you believe that there's Islamophobia and whatever, and you believe that this country doesn't like black people, brown people, whatever. I'm going to play kind of a compilation of videos of you saying just that. Watch.
The boot of the NYPD is on your neck. It's been laced by the IDF. I think of how the NYPD and the IDF have had a relationship for many years, a relationship that has meant, tactics of oppression crossing from one country to the other, and that has meant an increased, surveillance and oppression of marginalized people wherever they may be. The way that prisons are set up in our society, I would argue that they do not work. They do not make us safer. The instinct is to just take that person, the source of that harm, the source of that issue, and then just throw them away. Put them in a cage and throw away the key. The boot of the NYPD is on your neck. It's been laced by the IDF. I think of how the NYPD and the IDF have had a relationship for many years, a relationship that has meant, tactics of oppression crossing from one country to the other, and that has meant an increased, surveillance and oppression of marginalized people wherever they may be. The way that prisons are set up in our society, I would argue that they do not work. They do not make us safer. The instinct is to just take that person, the source of that harm, the source of that issue, and then just throw them away. Put them in a cage and throw away the key.
Yeah, we want them locked up. Again, this country wants them locked up. We got to make everyone safer. We got to make this country run better than what it has been. And again, we have got to understand that rehabilitation is largely a myth. Again, if people want to stop doing what they're doing and correct themselves, they will. And they will seek out the proper channels to help them. But largely, people don't. They don't want to rehabilitate. They don't want to become better. They don't want to become productive members of this country. They don't. Now, again, I would say that, throw them away. Throw these people away so they don't hurt, so they don't rob, so they don't rape, so they don't kill anymore. Again, that's what you do. And that is not at all racist against black people, against brown people, Islamophobic, whatever. That's not. If you think it is, you're the one with the problem. You're the one with the issue. And we got to understand that. And again, to go back to your socialist ideas, you're wanting to increase taxes, you said, on white people, on white rich people, to pay for your programs. Now, again, we got to remember, this country, like EBT, like SNAP or whatever, that program, again, that takes money away from taxpayers, and it puts money into the pockets of other people, that so they can pay for their groceries, they can pay for their food. And again, that causes the demand for the groceries to go up. So it causes the prices to go up. And again, the taxpayers are actually being penalized twice. Again, when they had to give money over for those programs, and then where they have to pay higher prices in the stores for their items. Do you understand? And again, we have got to understand that is wrong. You're taking money away from people that produce and giving it to those that don't produce. Now, again, there are certain people that I totally understand need that for at least for a time to get over whatever hardship is going on in their life. I get that. I totally do. And there are people that are disabled, whatever, that again use that to pay for their groceries, whatever. And again, I get all that. But again, we have to remember there are 40 to 45 million people in this country that are on food stamps, that are on SNAP, that again are getting money from the taxpayers to pay for their food. And they're threatening to steal on November 1st. We're going to steal. If we don't get our money, we're going to steal. Yeah. We got to remember that is a crime. And we don't want people out there doing this. Again, they're costing everyone. But again, we got to believe, according to you, this country is racist against black people, against brown people. And it's not. Again, it's just a thing that you like to say. And people on the left, they like to say to win elections. That's what you do. Now, I want to play a clip of you talking with Jon Stewart. Zohran Mamdani talking with Jon Stewart. And again, this man, Jon Stewart, is definitely 100% lost. 100%. But again, we got to believe this country is Islamophobic, is racist against black people, against brown people, against whoever. If you're not white, and the biggest threat to this country is white supremacy. Yeah. But guys, watch.
I wish you all the best. Honestly, I think any New Yorker who looks at someone getting an opportunity, who's representing communities that have not been as represented, a Muslim, a young person, a progressive, a democratic socialist, there are so many different communities that are looking to you. And this, I hate to put it on you, as a bit of a Jackie Robinson moment. And I know that probably wields some weight, but man, oh man, what an exciting opportunity.
Thank you.
And I wish you the best.
Thank you.
A Jewish man, again, lost. This man is lost, completely lost. How many people in Israel, how many Muslims in Israel have been elected officials? There have been quite a few. But again, we got to believe that America and Israel, they are Islamophobic. Yeah, I don't think so. We've had people on the Supreme Court, Muslims on the Supreme Court in Israel. Now, in this country, in America, we have had Muslim people that have become mayors, that have been on city councils, that have been governors, that have been in Congress, that sit there and openly talk against the United States of America. Again, we've allowed that, but we are Islamophobic. We don't like Muslims. Yeah, not true at all. Not true in the least. Now I'm going to play for you guys a clip from Christopher Hitchens from 2009. And Christopher is warning everyone against Islam, against the takeover. And again, we have seen in the last decade or so in UK, Muslim people become mayors, taking over. And we've seen how that's worked out for Europe. So again, I don't think we're Islamophobic enough in this country. Again, we want to keep our country the way it is. And again, they have nothing against Muslim people. If you want to assimilate, if you want to come here, assimilate, and again, become American. Because again, that's what we need. That is how we keep a country together. But I want you guys to see this clip from Christopher Hitchens from 2009. Watch.
This is very urgent business, ladies and gentlemen. I beseech you. Resist it while you still can, and before the right to complain is taken away from you, which will be the next thing. You will be told you can't complain because you're Islamophobic. The term is already being introduced into the culture as if it was an accusation of race hatred, for example, or bigotry, whereas it's only the objection to the preachings of a very extreme and absolutist religion. Watch out for these symptoms. They are not just symptoms of surrender, very often ecumenically offered to you by men of God in other robes, Christian and Jewish and smarmy ecumenical. These are the ones who will hold open the gates for the barbarians. The barbarians never take a city till someone holds the gates open for them. And it's your own preachers who will do it for you, and your own multicultural authorities who will do it for you. Resist it while you can. And if you wonder what will happen if you don't, look and see how a cricket team in Middlesex in England had to change its name by force last week, because it was called, and had been for years, the Middlesex Crusaders. Look and see how stories about little pigs can't be taught to children in English schools anymore, lest offense be taken by the religion of peace. Resist it while you can.
Back in 2009, Christopher Hitchens, 100% correct. 100%. Again, we see what's happening in Europe right now. We see what's happening in the UK. And again, we don't want that happening here in the US. We definitely don't. You know, the party, the Democratic Party, they have gone full-blown socialist. Back 5 years ago, they would have shied away from that term. They would have said, oh no, not socialism. We're progressive. They would have said. And now they're a full-blown socialist. And again, we have truly got to understand the only difference between socialism and communism is the barrel of a gun. That is the only difference between the two. We truly got to understand that. And Christopher Hitchens once said, Islamophobia, a word created by fascists, used by cowards to manipulate morons. And he's 100% correct. But if you guys would, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Thanks.